Last time we spoke about time and how devastating it is to, and yet how easy it is to put time behind, to put all of time behind us. In relation to well-being and wellness, emotional well-being, emotional wellness. We also spoke about how belief is a form of time, is time itself. Belief in general, the subject of belief itself being time, regardless of the object of belief, whatever that object may be. One may believe in one thing, the other may believe in another thing, or another idea, another concept, another form of energy, so on and so forth. But what we're saying is the subject of belief itself, the process of belief itself, the mechanism of belief, the nature of belief itself is from the same fabric of time, from the same fabric of I am here and I believe in there, or I believe I will become there. That movement is time, and therefore belief is time. Simply put, without any analysis at all, plain common sense. And I think it's important to approach anything immaterial or anything worth understanding with immense common sense and nothing but common sense, which seems to be a very rare commodity these days, especially in the backdrop of the information age, the age of distraction, the age of entertainment. Common sense becomes, unfortunately, more difficult. And yet so easy at the same time. One can easily switch off the phone, switch off the TV, and rely on one's common sense. In fact, one can keep the TV on and keep the smartphone on and also continue relying on common sense and using the smartphone, the TV, etc. for practicality, for convenience. But not be controlled by them, not allow one's life to be dedicated to them, shaped by them, etc. And so belief is time. And if one were to look closer at this mechanism of time as part of one's life, again, not as a subject on its own, not as a standalone subject of time, because this is not a lecture. In the classroom, the teacher or the lecturer would stand up and present a topic, a subject. The teacher might present, I don't know, anger management one day, or a certain mathematical model one day, or a certain business concept one day, and then explain it, and then the students would listen to that topic and that explanation and would focus on it, put a lot of attention in that subject, and try to grasp it, understand it, apply it, etc. That's what a lecture is. Teacher and student concentrating on a specific topic, breaking it down into parts, analyzing it, looking at the various parts in hopes of understanding the whole subject itself. And then, testing oneself on that knowledge, comparing with others, etc. And that whole game, which is quite useful in certain areas. For example, an architect who wants to build a bridge can never build a bridge unless the architect studies the various topics of architecture and engineering and how to build a bridge. And so lectures and topics and subjects and the breaking down of something into its parts definitely has its use. But we're questioning whether that same approach or same approach applies when understanding oneself and understanding one's relationship to the world and understanding how to bring about peace and order in this world. Because we've done topics, we've done subjects, we've done analysis, we've done lectures to try and bring about order and peace in this world. We've studied a lot of ideologies, Western, Eastern, ancient, modern, you name it. We've taught them in universities, in schools, in PhD programs, in research centers. Hundreds of thousands of people dedicate their lifetimes every year, regularly, to study various concepts, various topics, to try and bring about a better world, a better human being. And yet, what do we end up with at the end of the day? A world merely that looks a little bit more polished in some regions, while other regions look like disasters, complete disasters if you watch the news. But at least some parts of the world look shiny and polished, with high-rise buildings and bustling streets and high-tech, machinery and equipment, and the whole gamut of that. But that's it, I'm afraid. We build rockets, we reach the moon, we reach other planets, and we still haven't been able to figure out how to bring order and peace to one planet, the planet which we have been on. And that's very peculiar, I think, and very noteworthy, that through time and through the diligent focus and attention on certain topics, specialized topics, specialized subjects, either taught in the classroom or outside of the classroom, passed down from generation to the next, from one region to the next. We still haven't been able to bring about order inwardly and outwardly. Order not as in military order, we've done that obviously, but order as in peace, tranquility, clarity, love, absence of violence, absence of fear, a thriving human being, a peaceful planet, a planet with no division among its inhabitants. That is what I mean by order. In fact, that is what I mean by law even. So if you take a closer look at the mechanism of time, again, as part of our living, not as a separate subject taught in a classroom or outside of the classroom by a lecturer, because that apparently doesn't work in the realm of understanding, relationship, order, peace, tranquility, but rather observing oneself, this peculiar, beautiful thing called life and living, and observing it with joy, without analysis. And if there is analysis, to observe that analysis with joy, without condemnation, without judgment, And if there is judgment, to watch that judgment with joy. You see, observation is a very flexible thing. It's a very agile thing, very dynamic. It must be observed from moment to moment. Come what may. Condemnation included, self-judgment included, everything included. Attention included, lack of attention included, you name it. And so if we look closer at our own lives, we will notice quite easily how willpower is a very important part of our lives. To will oneself to something. I'm willing to go through a certain process to become something. I'm willing to put in the effort, the energy, the time to become a good runner, a good skater, a good dancer, a good business person. And so willpower, right? Which means what? Which means intention. I focus on it. I isolate that topic, wanting to run, wanting to become a runner with certain standards, with a certain pace, a certain speed. So I isolate that topic, much like in a classroom, and then I analyze it. What is needed to become that runner? What does it require? What does it mean to become a runner? What are the various parts of becoming a good runner? And I study it and I apply it day in, day out, and therefore I become a good runner or a better runner. So what is happening? What is taking place here? Willpower, obviously, regardless of the word willpower. I mean, really, this is again not a classroom in the sense we're not going to focus a lot on these professional terms or industry terms. But for convenience and for communication, for the sake of communication between us, we're going to talk about a few terms, very basic ones, like willpower. We're not going to go much more functional than that or academic at all. In fact, this is not an academic lecture, of course, but rather simply and basically to will oneself intentionally to go after a certain topic and to get it, right? And I think that's not much different than belief itself. It might look different from belief, but is it really in its core fabric? What is a belief? A belief is, I'm here, but I believe in there. And I'll work towards it, hoping that it will come. And so willpower is more or less the same thing in essence, isn't it? I'm here, I'm not a good runner, but I'd like to be a good runner. And so these are the steps that I'll take towards it, and hopefully I will become a good runner. And so willpower, belief, and all these various things that we have come up with, and the discipline of psychology has really focused on, unfortunately, is quite synonymous with each other. Not much difference going on between belief, things like belief and things like time, things like willpower. But of course, this is to join them together, all of them, to synthesize them all together, and to be able to see the commonality between all of them is devastating for business, and for industry, and for society, because there's a lot of interest in belief, there's a lot of interest in time, there's a lot of interest in topics and subjects and breaking them down as is done in a classroom, which is the academic field. This is essentially what the academic field is. It is the categorization of topics, and then the breaking down and the analysis of each into their various parts, and then encouraging people to specialize in one of these. And therefore, society becomes specialized, becomes fragmented, becomes divided, not only now culturally, racially, and various demographic divisions, but also now professionally, academically. We are academically and professionally divided. Do not underestimate the impact this has on society. Each one of us is dedicated to their profession. Each one of us even identifies, unfortunately, very unfortunately, with one's profession, with one's academic field. A doctor does not only practice medicine, but is also a doctor by identity, unfortunately. To be a doctor is a big part of who one is. This has huge implications on life and living and order in society. Whereas rather, in a different world altogether, one can be a doctor without identifying with the profession at all. One can merely simply practice medicine and practice, healing, treating illnesses. In fact, a good doctor will not focus on treatment, will focus on prevention, without the need to identify with the profession and with the money involved in it. And notice how this whole business of identification, which is quite an emotional movement, ends up corrupting the practices that we do. A doctor who identifies with his profession, with his academic field, ends up focusing on the things that bring him or bring her more money, or ends up focusing on the things that the industry focuses on. Please pay very good attention to this. If the industry is corrupt and the industry is fueled and has interests in treatment and in drugs and pharmaceuticals and in medication and insurance and all of these industrial things, then a doctor who identifies with this industry will also follow the same path, knowingly or unknowingly. Will end up focusing on treatment, medication, pharmaceuticals, insurance, all of these things. Surgeries, complicated surgeries, expensive surgeries, so on and so forth. Whereas, if a doctor doesn't identify with the industry or the profession, a doctor will simply be only interested in the profession itself, not as in the industry, but rather the practice itself, the science itself, the field itself, and observe it closely, love it, enjoy it. Go into its details, its contours, its fabric, its content, and see what comes out of that. A doctor who loves his profession or loves his practice will inevitably find out that prevention is everything. And therefore, that doctor must really focus a lot of their time and effort and energy on prevention, on speaking about prevention, on talking to patients about prevention, on setting up practices around prevention. But most of the doctors are not very interested in that. In fact, doctors don't even apply prevention to themselves, do they? A lot of the times you find doctors who indulge in smoking and drinking and eating things that cause harm and illnesses. And then how can you expect that doctor to be interested in preventing illness and disease among their patients? And I think one of the basic reasons why this is so is because of identification with the profession, with the industry, and therefore becoming molded by that industry, by that academic field. Whereas to practice medicine with dignity, with joy, is something completely different. And putting away industry, putting away the academic field. And this doesn't mean that that doctor will not be knowledgeable or be an expert in surgery or knowledgeable about the field. This has nothing to do with that. Academic knowledge or knowledge itself is not a barrier for observation and for joy. And also joy is not an observation for knowledge. And so, through willpower, a doctor, for example, will chase their industry, keep up with their industry, the industry that they identify with. Through willpower, that doctor will stay abreast of it. And I wonder whether willpower has any role in bringing about order and peace and well-being and wellness in this world. Physical wellness, emotional wellness, medical wellness, political wellness. Because you see, wellness is not an industry. Again, it's not a topic as they made it. Now you have politics on one side, the medical field on the other, and then wellness as something completely separate, associated with vanilla things like breathing technique and pseudo-scientific topics such as yoga and meditation and spirituality and drug-induced things such as ayahuasca ceremonies and all of that. That has now become the wellness industry. Whereas to observe oneself and society without identification, without willpower, without time, I think it's inevitable that one would see the universality of wellness and well-being, and how it is not merely the vanilla field that they have diligently worked to make, but a universal field that permeates every single profession, every single academic field, every single thing on this world, on this planet. Political well-being, which is what is it? Politics? It's not the corrupt thing that we see on the evening news or down the street. Politics is the efficient handling of the people's affairs, public affairs, handling those and administering those public affairs efficiently, sanely, with common sense and with love. That is what politics is. And then you see, and so you see, because we have divided wellness from politics, politics ended up becoming the ugly thing that it has been since the dawn of humanity. Whereas it doesn't have to be this way. If we're able to observe it, then we'll see that wellness is not different from politics. In fact, wellness is a quality and not an industry. A quality that, a human quality that touches everything or everywhere the human hand reaches and the human eye reaches. With wellness and well-being, one may touch politics, one may touch academia, one may touch research and development, one may touch technology, one may touch education, transportation, architecture, how cities are designed, environmental action. With well-being and wellness, one will touch global warming and the causes of global warming. One will focus on the real causes of, human causes of global warming. The most important of which being pollution. Pollution. One will not enter into various debates whether global warming, is man-made or human or natural-made, and then the endless political discussions that emanate from that. But one will say, okay, I'm polluting as an individual, as a society, as a world. I must stop polluting. And then, of course, that will take us in a completely different path. If pollution becomes the main topic, then I think, which can only become the main topic if the quality of wellness, or if a quality of wellness touches the human mind, and therefore through the human mind flows through the body, through the hands, and touches whatever field it wants to touch. That is how we will solve our individual, emotional, and also societal problems. And all of this, ladies and gentlemen, does not require time at all. Even though to eradicate pollution globally is obviously something that will take time, it cannot happen in a second. But the insight to stop pollution immediately, the insight that wellness is not different from politics, the insight that wellness is not an industry but a quality that must be brought about urgently, without time, without willpower. Wellness is not a Mickey Mouse game like how to run or how to learn a language. It's much more than that, much more holistic. It's much more attainable. It's right there. It's in here. All of these things are attainable without time, without willpower. And that's beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. That's powerful. This means change, radical change, is right there, right in front of us to grab.